Hey, welcome to the special, uber awesome, amazing 25th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. Thank you so much for riding with me all this time if you've listened to me from the jump. And if this is your first time listening to this show, thank you for coming and joining the ride, and I hope I can give you your chill, positive, and passionate wrestling vibes here at Hardy Wrestling. So on this show, I'm going to give you an especially packed news and gossip-ish, and I'm also going to give you a special interview with Reality of Wrestling star and my very first female guest, Promise Braxton, and I've got your weekly recap of all your favorite shows from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. So sit back, relax, and listen to this 25th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Okay, so I got your regular news and gossip-ish here. And there's a lot of stuff going on in wrestling. Some of it good, some of it bad, and some of it sad. But we're going to get through it all and, just push on through, okay? So, first on the docket, we have Miro, who's formerly known as Rusev in WWE, who made his AEW debut Wednesday night. So, after being released by WWE surprisingly due to COVID-19 budget cuts, and also building a following on Twitch and insinuating his retirement from professional wrestling, Miro made his AEW debut as Kip Sabian's best man to his wedding to Penelope Ford. Now, I've been sort of watching AEW, off and on, so I really didn't see it Wednesday night, when he did make his debut. I kind of saw it online after it happened, but I thought that it was really cool that, he was able to get on this other promotion, because there was always so much talk of how much talent Rusev had, or Miro had, in terms of wrestling, and how there are a lot of fans who feel like WWE did not really cut him a fair shot in sort of going for what they feel like he should have gone for, which could have been the WWE title or the Universal title at some point, but he had always won sort of like the secondary titles, like the United States title or the Intercontinental title. And the last major feud he was in WWE really had to do with Lana and Bobby Lashley, which was kind of a train wreck. In the greatest sense of the word, it was a train wreck. And then after that, we just didn't really see him on TV that much anymore. And then he, got let go. So now he's in AEW, and here's hoping that he can actually do more and do better there. But the thing that I'm finding the most irritating about, whenever former superstars from WWE leave there and then go to AEW, is the fact that they all sort of cut this by the numbers, I wasn't happy over there, so now I'm over here promo. And that is something that Miro did do, and it felt like every time there's someone, with the exception of a few wrestlers maybe, who, it's like every time any former WWE superstar leaves there and then goes to AEW, it's almost like the popular thing to do is to shoot on WWE and talk about how they felt like they were done wrong over there, and how they felt like, well, now that I'm over here, I'm actually going to do better because they're actually going to give me the chance, and all of the above. And even though this company may just very well give you a chance to rise and all of the above, which I certainly hope they do in such a positive way, it's just that I almost feel like it's almost becoming a little bit more redundant to have these people say all this stuff and diss WWE over and over again just for the sake of a pop or something, or just for the sake of attention. Like, we get that you weren't happy as much, or whatever, but at the same point and rate, don't just come off as some bitter barb now that you've moved on to something that you feel like is greater for you. I just feel like once you've moved on to that new thing, you should just focus on that new thing and don't just focus so much on the old. But, I'm just a wrestling fan, so what do I know? Also in the docket, in terms of AEW, you had Matt Hardy sort of discussing what's happening with him and his health. As you may or may not know, a few weeks ago, AEW had their pay-per-view called All out, and he was in a match with Sammy Guevara, and he took a really, really nasty spill where Sammy Guevara speared him, and then he landed on the concrete, in the back of his head, hit the concrete, and it looked like he was out for like maybe a couple seconds before he finally came to, and they were contemplating stopping the match after that point. Well, as that happened, there's been an update on his health from Tony Khan, who is the CEO of AEW, who said that Matt was okay and that they sent him to the hospital as a precaution, and he passed the MRI and CT scans, and he doesn't have a concussion, and he's being driven home right now. Matt will be on Dynamite Wednesday night to thank you, amazing fans, for your support, which he was on there on Wednesday. And it was good to see him, but honestly, I really would have liked it if he just had, more rest and just wasn't rushing to be back on television. But he's a Hardy, so, we're hard. We like to, push through our problems and still show up and do what we came there to do. That's what Hardys do. So I'm glad he's okay. But that fall was very, very nasty. So here's hoping that he's able to recover and come back stronger than ever. Hardy gang, Hardy gang. Also in the news, we have the unfortunate passing of Stevie Lee Richardson, aka Puppet the Psycho Dwarf from TNA and Half Pint Brawlers. That news was shared on Facebook Wednesday, and friends of the wrestler have since put together a GoFundMe to help with the funeral arrangements. Jim Richardson, his brother, is in charge of the final arrangements, and they are trying to reach a goal of $5,000. And as of, I believe, Thursday, they had reached about $200, and the name of the GoFundMe is called Laying Puppet to Rest. And if you have it on your heart to give, please go on GoFundMe and give to that, and help that family out, because paying for funerals is just not an easy thing, especially if you're not prepared for that loss. And just so you have some context of what the Psycho Dwarf did, he wrestled Tom Arnold once during an event done in collaboration with Fox Sports Net and TNA, and he famously pulled a gun on Jeff Jarrett in Storyline and had acting roles in Oz the Great and Powerful and American Horror Story. So we wish that Richardson family the very best, and pray that they can heal from this difficult time. Also, in more sadder news, Barry Scott, who was the voice of Impact Wrestling, passed away as well. And he was a staple in Impact Wrestling, and Impact actually released a statement saying, quote, that we are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Barry Scott. For years, Barry was the iconic voice of TNA wrestling, lending us gravitas and credibility. He will be dearly missed. And in this Twitter thread that they posted, they posted a couple of his features dating back to even 2005, where he did the intro to the October 1st, 2005 episode of Impact, which is the first episode on Spike TV, the intro to Bound for Glory 2005, the intro to TNA on Access TV Special, the intro to Slammiversary in 2012 and 2018, and his final appearance on Impact earlier this year was in which he did the personal introduction for the Moose Nation. So we wish his family the very best in that situation as well, and pray that they get all the healing that they need from, and the comfort that they can get from this troubling time. Also, to switch gears in the news, Gerald Briscoe, who is a WWE Hall of Famer, says that Vince McMahon released him on Twitter. Now, he was furloughed in April due to cuts from the pandemic, but he stated on Twitter that he had actually received a call from the chairman of the board, Vince McMahon, to let him know that after 36 years of dedication that he's no longer needed. But he said that he was okay with it and he'll still be around to help talent, and more information will follow. Now, if you may or may not know, Gerald Briscoe is like an OG in the wrestling game. Like, him and his brother started wrestling in 1969 at the age of 23. Jack Briscoe. And they won tag team gold together in several promotions, including Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Championship Wrestling from Florida. And he is best known to current fans for his on-screen role during the Attitude Era, along with Pat Patterson, who is also a Hall of Famer and inaugural Intercontinental Champion. He was one of Vince McMahon's stooges during the Attitude Era. And despite being over 50 years old at that time, Briscoe often took a lot of beatings at the hands of WWE's top superstars, including Stone Cold Steve Austin, to protect his boss. And he's even won the Hardcore Championship twice. And the last time he was ever on television was July of last year when he won the 24/7 title. So even as he has been let go, we still wish him the best. And also, in terms of furloughed superstars, one superstar who was actually able to return was Josiah Williams, aka Wrestle and Flow. He's that rapper from NXT. If you pay any attention, or if you watched an NXT takeover in which Adam Cole made one of his great entrances, he actually rapped a version of Adam Cole's theme song for that match. And he got furloughed, along with everyone else with the budget cuts, but he actually made his grand return on Instagram and posted a picture, and I was so glad to see he had returned because he is an all-around good guy. He definitely posts lots of stuff that's faith-based. He posts different Twitter threads where he's actually, sometimes praying for people if you subscribe to that level of faith. And he's also just an amazing, astounding rapper. It's like, because he got the attention of WWE management when he was always rapping his own original verses over theme songs of different wrestlers like Samoa Joe, Keith Lee, and even his own original songs, involving Black Pride. So it was so good to see him make his grand return to NXT, and here's hoping he gets to do more. I'm predicting that one day he'll rap at WrestleMania. That'll be fire. So that's gonna be cool. Also on the wrestling docket, NXT UK is starting its relaunch process. So basically, next week's new episode is going to involve them sort of starting this whole relaunch campaign. So it's been announced that Piper Niven is going to challenge Kaylee Ray for the NXT UK Women's Championship on September 24th. And it was also announced that NXT UK Tag Team Champions Wolfgang and Mark Coffey of Gallus will defend their titles against Kitty Williams and Amir Jordan. So as they're basically rebuilding their brand in light of all of the stuff that went down with the speaking out movement, I just hope that everything is able to go forth. And WWE also is rumored to have purchased the rights to use the Heritage Cup name to possibly start a tournament with the NXT UK show. So that's going to be interesting, and I'm pretty sure they're going to announce a whole lot more involving that process. So that's going to be cool as well. So that's really all I got in news and gossip-ish. So now we're going to go to my special interview with my first female guest and Reality of Wrestling star, Promise Braxton. How are you, ma'am?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. So I'm really happy that you're on my show. I just thank you so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure, never a chore.
Oh, wow. That's really deep. I like that a lot.
You can't steal it.
Oh, no, I won't steal it, I promise. Okay, so I'm going to start this interview by asking the question that I ask everyone is, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
It's something that I used to watch a lot when I was a kid with my dad. I was a daddy girl. My older sister would go with my mom, and I would want to stay with my dad. And we used to watch boxing, MMA, wrestling, and football, all types of sports together, and wrestling was just something that I took to because it was only it was one of the few things I could actually do towards him. Like, I used to give him all types of wrestling moves and stuff. But yeah, I just started from just watching it with my father, then later with my grandfather. And it first started as just, something that I liked, and then it became an obsession, then it became my livelihood.
Wow, that's so funny because it's kind of how I started watching wrestling.
Really?
It was me and my father, except I was never really mimicking a whole lot of the moves or nothing like that because I'm kind of like a girly girl, so I really never did anything like that. But I loved watching it simply because it was just so entertaining, and we just sort of bonded that way.
Seriously, I definitely understand that.
Yeah. So, what exactly made you want to pursue it as a career?
I think it's what I was supposed to do. I didn't want to go to college. I never really set my heart on anything else, really. Like, I know that, in real life speaking, you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, but if I got 10 eggs, I definitely put around 8 in wrestling basket. So, so I knew it's something I always knew I wanted to do. I never really seen myself clocking in and clocking out for the rest of my life. I knew I needed something where I needed to express myself, inspire people, and just do it that way versus, taking the stereotypical route, going to college and stuff. Not saying that that's a bad way. I just knew it wasn't for me.
Okay. So, what was learning the ropes like, and who trained you, and do you ever find time to practice still?
Yes, all the time. My first trainer was a man named Brandon K. and Crusher Hansen. Some of the greatest men I've ever met. It wasn't that hard, but it was hard because it's a whole bunch of step 1, step 2, step 3. Don't put it all together. And that kind of confused me a lot, but yeah, any professional wrestler should continue their training no matter what, no matter where you are. WWE, reality wrestling, some promotion out in Oklahoma, everyone should practice their craft if they want to get better. That's what I do.
Okay. So, how has the culture of independent wrestling treated you? Like, even with fans or just with working with certain people, how has it, treated you so far?
I have no complaints about it. You definitely have to have thick skin in this business. You can't walk around and take everything personal. There's always going to be those people that try to bring you down, but there's more people that are always going to try to bring you up. Especially my experience from wrestling in Pittsburgh, I had people like Lee Moriarty, Duke Davis, Christian Noir, Jocelyn Navarro, Megan Myers, always on my team. And then I come here and it's the same thing. I got people like Danny B, Warren Johnson, AQA, Rachel Rose. It's nothing but love. People have their own experiences, but I try to be cordial with everybody. Same with the fans. I never really had any issues with fans or with promoters. I try to be very respectful in this business because at the end of the day, it's fun, it's entertaining, but it is a business. So I try to respect it that way.
See, it's good to hear that you've actually built a family out of that, because it's good to not go through, life and anything that new alone. So it's good to hear that you've built a community around it that's, supporting you and letting you know, when you're doing your very best. So that's good to hear. I want to ask you if it's harder on women who want to pursue wrestling in the independent circuit. If so, would you mind sharing any stories?
I guess it just depends on who, the woman is. I've seen girls who've wrestled for 2 years and blown up, and I've seen girls who've been on the independent scene for 10 years and finally get an opportunity. So I think it just all depends on who you are and what you're really around, Like me personally, I knew I had to make the move to Texas if I wanted to get somewhere. I mean, I think I'd have been okay in Pittsburgh, but I felt like I was stagnant. And some of that is okay with certain people, but I knew that I have more potential and I can do more. But I think it just depends on the woman. There's a lot of opportunities for women right now. It's not like it was 10 years ago. So I think if any woman wants the opportunity to be a wrestler, you guys gotta buckle down, figure out what you want and how you want it, and then take it.
Well said. So, seeing as the pandemic has affected everyone to a certain degree, all over the world for this entire year, I have spoken to other independent wrestlers who've said that it sort of affected them in some ways. So how has the pandemic affected you, and how have you coped with it?
I mean, yeah, the pandemic is definitely an unfortunate event for all of us. I had certain things I wanted to do, but I know that it's not going to happen. It's just not right now. So I don't look at opportunities that don't come for me, like that don't go through right away, and think of it as a total loss. I think of it as maybe if the pandemic didn't happen and I did this tryout or I did this seminar or I reached out to this promotion, then something bad would have happened. So I've been blessed to be a part of reality of wrestling, and the matches that I've had during the pandemic have been very awesome. So I don't look at this pandemic as a loss. It's definitely a reevaluating my plan, I guess. You just got to switch it up a little bit. You don't have to change it up. Getting better in shape, working on my cardio, studying matches. I'm not going to look at it as, oh my God, this could have happened, shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's not that. It's going to happen the way it's supposed to happen. So I'm going to stick to my plan, and it's going to happen eventually.
That's a good way to look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's an amazingly, positive way to look at it, because a lot of people, kind of feel like, oh, just throw this whole year away. So,
I mean, definitely throw the year away. Definitely throw the whole year away. But if not for wrestling reasons, a lot of unfortunate things happen to a lot of good people. Kobe Bryant, Gigi, Chadwick. Just disasters. Just bad things happen to just all over this world in this one year. So, but I don't look at it as, well, professional wrestling as this has stopped me, or I don't know what to do next. Like, you just got to figure it out and keep moving. Either you can get left behind or you can move along. And I chose to move along and not complain about it. Right.
And it's so funny that you brought up the idea of people wanting to throw the whole year away, because so many things have taken place and affected people with the pandemic, and also with Kobe and Gigi and Chadwick Boseman and everything. Because I'd actually just released my last episode, and I paid tribute to Chadwick Boseman.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, because to me, he just sort of embodied, the best of us, in everything that he did, even as he was going through what he was going through. And it's just for me, I just try to move forward as much as I possibly can, because honestly, you just have to make the best of every situation and to just reframe it in order to keep going. So switching gears, I wanted to ask you, what drew you to reality of wrestling, and have you ever wrestled for other promotions?
Yes, I started wrestling in 2017, April 2017, all over the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina. I've been a few places, and I felt really stagnant. I felt like I was just having pointless matches, and there was nothing coming out of it. And I've always told myself I would always wrestle smart, because you're doing something stupid and your heart's not into it, and I get injured, it's going to be a bad situation. And that happened. I tore my sternum,
Mm.
And it was just a point where I was kind of just like, do I want to continue doing this? It's just not for me. And it was kind of at a crossroads where I didn't know what to do with wrestling. I knew that it's been my passion since I was a kid. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but it wasn't working out for me in my favor the way I expected it to be. So I had to just take a deep breath and like look at myself in the mirror and figure out what was wrong. And a lot of the issues were my fault. I had an ego, my head was big, and I thought that this business owed me something, and I had to reevaluate my mindset. And my mom moved down. My mom is from Pennsylvania, and she moved to Texas in 2018, and she told me to come down here, and I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't really want to move right now. And she's like, just come down here and just, even if it's for a year, just get a different setting, just get out of that small town feel. So I did. And Reality Wrestling was an hour away from her house. So when I decided to move, it was one of those things where I gave myself a second chance. And Reality Wrestling gave me the opportunity to make that second dream to come true. So it's an honor to be on the roster. It's an honor to work with the girls, to learn from the trainers and talk to Booker T and learn from him. And just the whole experience has been great.
Wow, that sounds so good. Your story almost reminds me of Drew McIntyre's story, kind of like how he started in wrestling and thought that he had everything going on for him until he didn't have an injury really to sort of knock him backwards. His was just sort of like the fact that he just sort of tried to push himself forward before it was time. And then he wound up, having to reevaluate and then starting over again and, becoming better than he once was. So your story almost patterns his in a sense, but then at the same time, you just decided not to quit even after you faced, a difficult situation, which I can imagine being injured. Like, ow. Like, I'm sure that was just a tough experience, but you bounced back from it and found a place that was going to challenge you. So that's really good.
Thank you. It was hard. It was definitely hard. I had to, like most people don't know, if they do know this, they don't bring it up. I switched gimmicks. I switched my name. I did a lot of things that I didn't do before. When you lose yourself in this business, you have to start over. And you don't have to be exactly what I did. You have to reinvent yourself, but you have to start over. And people are afraid to do that. But I knew I had to make a change for the better. And this, the whole Promise Braxton, Rebel Buddhist thing, it's been absolutely great. Like, I love it. Like, I love my gimmick. I would do my gimmick if I wasn't it.
Well, that's good. Now, I want to ask you, if given the opportunity, would you wrestle for a mainstream promotion like WWE, AEW, and the like?
Yes. I'm not. I've never really told myself where I would do and what I wouldn't do. Like I never told myself like I won't go to WWE, or I won't go to New Japan, or I won't go to AEW, because I don't want to get my hopes up for nothing and be disappointed if something doesn't happen. I've always said I wanted to make a career off wrestling. I want to live off wrestling. I want everyone to know who Promise Braxton is. So an opportunity came to go to AEW, I would do it. Opportunity came to go to Impact Wrestling, I would do it. Opportunity to go to WWE, I would do it. Just for the experience. If I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. If I go to all three and I don't like none of them, I'll stay independent scene. If I go somewhere and like that place, I'll stay there. So I never really told myself, this is the goal. It's just to be successful. It's to have a great career and to pave the way for young, weird black girls like myself, I guess you can say. So that's what I wanted to do. The outcast black girl who's kind of like the loner, but just doesn't really want to talk to anybody, That was the person I was. So if I can like bring light to those people and the rebels and the people who just don't care what people think, that's what I want my career to be off of. And if I can inspire those people, you know, it ain't gotta be the weird black girl, it can be the weird looking white girl, or the weird black guy, or the Puerto Rican man, or it can be whoever. I just want people in the shadows to step forward, and I want to inspire them.
Wow, I love all of that so much.
Thank you.
So, how do you feel about women's wrestling and how it's perceived now?
Now, I mean, I've always loved women's wrestling. Like, since I was a kid. I remember back in like 2010, I used to watch WSU faithfully. Like, I would be on the computer from Friday night when I got home from school to like 3 in the morning watching anything as just anyone. What's her name? Sassy Stephanie, like girls that you don't even hear of anymore, really. Shimmer matches. It was just something that I always loved. A lot of girls, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people didn't know that women's wrestling was good back then. So now I feel like it's finally getting the credit that it's been supposed to have 20 years ago. I definitely think that a lot of women sacrifice their dignity and their pride to have these moments that we're having now, such as, you know, women main eventing WrestleMania, having 30-minute matches on WrestleMania, or even in the pay-per-view, having been taken seriously. So the way women's wrestling is moving now, I think in the next 5 years, 10 years, it's definitely going to blow up. It's going to take off, and I think women's wrestling is going to be finally equal to the men in 10 years.
It's so wonderful that you said that, because there were a couple of matches, you know, that would happen that would still be good even during the era which, you know, some of them were just known as divas. And it's just, those get so, you know, poo-pooed down because during that era of the time when it was mainstream, it was mostly just women just sort of, you know, doing the fluff stuff. But in the middle of that, you had some of these women who really were wrestling. And I think it's so good that you mentioned those other promotions where people like Mercedes Martinez and Sassy Stephanie, who I'm going to look up personally because, hey, that's my name. And Gail Kim, who had some time in WWE and Impact, you know, who tried to make a change, you know, and do all that amazing stuff. You know, and it's just, it gets so caught up, and sometimes we just forget that these women actually tried to make a change even in the midst of all of that. And I do believe that the women are, you know, equal to the men, and I feel like it's only going to get better, you know, as time goes on. So I'm totally with you on that. So who are some wrestlers that you watch for inspiration? Promise.
I watch everything, like you're like a wrestling fanatic. Recently, I've been watching a whole bunch of Juventud Guerrero. You know, small guy. I like to watch people who kind of not resemble me, but kind of have maybe like the underdog or the strong but smaller person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I watch a whole bunch of Kurt Angle's one of my favorites. I can watch him any day. Eddie Guerrero. Chris, I'm not gonna say his last name. You know, I'm gonna roll it in there. Gail Kim. I love Deonna Purrazzo. I love Jordan Grace. But and I'll take it back from the old school. You know, I'll watch some Rick Rude. I'll watch some Macho Man. I watch anything. And I was watching Princess Victoria back in like, what was it, 83? Moolah's matches, Wendy Richter. I just like wrestling. I get inspiration from not just the matches, but like their clothes, their promos, the way they walk, their entrance, their music. It's not just in the ring; it's everything. And I take inspiration from almost everything that I watch.
Wow, it's so varied, and I love how varied your taste in wrestling is. It's so cool because It's so funny that you mentioned, the smaller wrestlers who have power, because as I was watching some of your matches, it's like you're small, but you have all this power. And I'm just like, look at her lifting these people. Yes.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah. Okay, so since you call yourself the Rebel Buddhist, what are some ways that you apply your spirituality into your wrestling journey?
I'm not really like religious, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm more so of I believe in a higher power, but I'm very pro-human, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I believe in LGBT rights. I believe in Black Lives Matter. I believe that immigrants should have rights. Like, I'm pro-human. If you're not bothering anybody, I don't care. So that's basically like what my whole gimmick is. It's just be you. I'm not about to say or do anything I don't want to say or do anything I don't want to do. I don't want to get into things too much, but I stand for the rights of human beings. If you're a Jew, you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're black, you're white, you're gay, you're trans, I don't care. It's just if you're a cool human being, and I like to be what society doesn't like you to be. It's okay to be who you want to be. At the end of the day, when you die, you speak to one person, and that's it. If you're a good man, like, only one person's going to bed with that man, and that's you. So why should anyone care? Like, it's just, I don't care about what people do. It's just being authentic with you at any cost, being unapologetic, and just being carefree of the world, caring about other people, caring about children, caring about charity, helping into your brothers and sisters who don't have what you might have, or giving love for the rich, and being okay with that. It's just being okay to be you. That's what being a rebel Buddhist means. It's just being okay with who you are and just accepting that, and don't apologize for it. Don't say sorry for it. Don't backpedal on it. It's just being you, and that's what I've always wanted.
You know what? You are such a beautiful human.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
that
you.
is just so beautiful. Like, it just is. Let me just go to the next question. Who has been your favorite opponent to face so far?
I have two. It's my tag partner for the Mission Pro Wrestling match coming up in September 18th, 2020. Her name is Killa Kate. We had a match back in February, and it was just, I guess you call it chemistry. Just the awesome opponent. Then the other one, I would say, actually three. It's a girl named Katie Arquette. She's from Pittsburgh. She wrestles for IWC. And just one girl I wish that can come down here. Like, so much talent, so much potential. And I can't wait to see where she goes in the next year or so. And the last person is, of course, the Super Saiyan herself, AQA. I mean, her name stands for itself. She does things that no other woman in wrestling can do. Shooting star press, just flipping in the air, that like a video game character. She's just an amazing woman, amazing wrestler, and I would love to wrestle her again.
That's actually good, because I actually watched your match with her, and I thought it was a really good match. Like, I had never heard of her up until that point, but once I finally watched her, I was just like, wow, this is good.
She's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any more dream opponents?
Definitely Deonna Purrazzo. Definitely want to fight her. Avery Taylor's another one. I definitely want to fight her. I've been watching her a lot, and she's definitely someone that I would love to fight. And I would say last one. I want Bert Vixen by herself. This will be the second time facing Bert Vixen, but it's going to be in a tag match. Both matches have been tag matches. I would love to face Bert Vixen one-on-one.
Okay. So one last question. What does the future hold for Promise Braxton?
We don't know. Honestly, I don't know. You know, I like to think that I'm a good person. I like to think that I work hard, because I do work hard for my craft, and I respect his business. So I know eventually I'm going to end up successful in this business, but I'm not rushing it. It's going to come in due time. But as far as now, I'm here for the ride. I'm enjoying myself, having fun. I enjoy the road. I enjoy the trips. I enjoy everything about professional wrestling. So I know it's going to happen. When? Who knows? Kind of, who even cares? I just want to have fun with this sport.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. Like, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So, if you can, just put yourself over, talk about any social media accounts or merchandise or any shows you got coming up. Just let the people know.
Ladies and gents, the biggest women's show of the year is in 2 weeks. It is September 18th, Mission Pro Wrestling. It's going to be me, Promise Braxton, Alex Gracia, Thunder Rosa, Lindsay Snow, Avery Taylor, Baby D, and so much more. Please get your tickets. You can find me on Instagram at Promise_Braxton, my Facebook at Promise Braxton, and my Twitter at Braxton Promise.
Thank you so much for coming on my show. I'm so honored that you're going to be on this this 25th episode, and the fact that you're my first female guest. Like, I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
No problem. Take care.
You too.
All right, so now we're in the weekly recap section, and this is where I'm going to talk about what happened on Raw. So, in terms of women, we had a match between Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, who are formerly known as the Iconics. They basically decided to put them in a match against each other, I'm assuming, simply because of the fact that I believe last week, once Peyton and Billie broke up after they lost their fight against Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan, Peyton basically threw Billie to the wolves in Raw Underground. So now they're fighting each other, and they had on their different outfits. You know how Peyton had on like her pink outfit, and then Billie Kay came out there in her gold outfit. And the match was relatively quick. You know, Peyton wound up winning with her DDT that she does, where she whips them like in a ribbon, sort of like in a ribbon thing, and and she wound up winning the match with that. But something that happened that was telling about their friendship, even in real life, was the fact that after the match was over, Billie Kay was crying and Peyton Royce was comforting her. And one of the coolest parts about this night was just how, as I was live tweeting and talking about the episode and talking about this component of the show, was how I had basically tweeted out and said that I'm glad, that they're still friends. That's really cool. And that I see Peyton, trying to, come up. And as I tweeted that out, someone who responded to me was the actual USA Network Twitter page. Like, it was official because it had the check by it, so it was verified. And they commented and said that at least that friendship is still intact, because all around wrestling, you see all the friendships falling apart, like with Bayley and Sasha. And it's just so, and then with Seth and Buddy Murphy, there are a lot of friendships falling apart. So it's good to see that along with that, you still have the friendship of Billie Kay and Peyton Royce together. And the USA Network actually tweeted at me, and I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. Thanks. So I'm just sort of, living my best life on social media, guys. So just bear with me. It's a blessing. Anyway, then we had Asuka and Mickie James in their tag match with Lana and Natalya. So we've got this ongoing feud between Asuka and Mickie James for the Raw Women's title. Mickie looking to prove herself as one of the OGs in the business. And then you got Lana and Natalya, who are acting like they're just above all of them simply because of their whole social media following or whatever, which does not a women's champion make, but we'll discuss that at another time. So Asuka and Mickie James are set to fight each other this week on Raw in your face. I don't know why it's in your face, but it's they're set to face each other for the Raw Women's title. So before that, they had to team up together to fight Lana and Natalya. So Natty and Lana were dominating a little bit against Mickie James, which I feel like was kind of weird because, if you're trying to beef up and make Mickie James look strong, you can't have these other two girls trying to, fight her and make it seem like they're stronger than her. But as she was on the defensive, there was a point where Mickie was able to create separation and make the tag for Asuka. And then somehow or another, Asuka got knocked off the apron, but then she climbed to the ropes, and it's just like she was able to make a tag and then tap Lana out with the Asuka lock. So at that point, they were able to celebrate their victory, but Mickie James was looking on with like a half smile, but she was unamused, by everything that was going on because she knows that pretty soon she's going to have to fight Asuka. So they won this match here, but it's like Natty and Lana just got too much offense in on her, and it was just kind of disappointing to see. So next week, it's going to be pretty cool to see Mickie and Asuka fight, like I said last week, but I'm wondering why they didn't just save it for Clash of Champions. Are they going to fight each other again, or is Asuka going to have like another opponent to face, or is it going to be like a fatal four-way between Lana, Natty, and Mickie? What's going to happen there at Clash of Champions? So really, that's all that happened with the women in terms of the main story or at least on the main show. Now, the show started with Randy Orton yet again talking about how he was warning Keith Lee, that the more they cross paths, the more it's likely he's going to get kicked in the head. And then he recapped how he gave Drew McIntyre those 3 punt kicks and suggested that Drew McIntyre just give up and just, hand the title over to him. But then there was a siren, because apparently in wrestling, people like to drive vehicles into buildings. And it was an ambulance. And guess who's driving the ambulance? Drew McIntyre. He came through and basically attacked Randy Orton with a Claymore kick. And then all the referees, including Adam Pearce, who's like this new guy whose presence I kind of appreciate in all of the shows, is just the fact that he's sort of there and not being completely bossy, but then, showing his authority. He was telling Drew McIntyre that he needed to leave the building, and just don't come back, for a while, because, that's dangerous. And they basically told him to just back off. But throughout the show, it was like you still saw Drew McIntyre sort of walking around and not leaving the building, even though he was told to. So that was just kind of interesting. Then after that, you had Apollo Crews, Ricochet, and Cedric Alexander versus the Hurt Business. So the Hurt Business attacked Cedric as he made his entrance in or whatever. But then Apollo Crews and Ricochet came to his defense, and they worked over Apollo Crews and they were cutting him off from the corner, keeping him from tagging and stuff. But it's just like the closer that Apollo Crews reached towards his corner, it's like Cedric did one of the craziest things that I didn't expect for him to do, even though they were kind of planting seeds towards it. It's just the fact that Cedric pulled Ricochet off of the ring apron and threw him into the guardrail. So y'all, Cedric is a bad guy. He's a bad guy now. No, he's gone to the dark side.
So from there, he delivered the lumbar check to Cruz, and then it made Shelton Benjamin score the win with pay dirt. So after this happened, Cedric Alexander was sort of standing outside the ring and looking at the Hurt Business, and he was smiling the entire time while commentary was like, "Oh my God, is this official? Is he really joining the Hurt Business right now?" But he was remaining non-committal until later on in the show, and this was really interesting because literally throughout his entire WWE career, Cedric Alexander has been a babyface in the sense that you loved his cruiserweight talent. He's a former cruiserweight champion, and you just loved the attitude that he kind of had. And then but you can't really say that he's been doing a whole lot, because anytime you wouldn't see him, everybody would be like, "Oh, well, where's Cedric?" And then at a certain point, he was feuding with AJ Styles for the U.S. title, but they never let him have it. It was like they were always letting him, get beat up by AJ Styles constantly, and then you didn't see him anymore, which was kind of a waste of his talent, honestly, because if you weren't going to have him on 205 Live, the least you could have done was just put him in some meaningful stories, but they just kept him in catering, as MVP likes to, dig at people all the time. So he had tag teamed with Ricochet, towards the beginnings of the pandemic era, if you could call it that. And, they would do stuff tag team wise, but outside of that, he never really did anything of note in his singles career or whatever. So now, finally, now that he's turned heel, there's so much more to him that, there's so much more that he could do as a heel along with the Hurt Business, because it's just like the Hurt Business is growing into this faction that's gaining all this momentum really fast. And Cedric would be dumb to not join this, because honestly, what in the world is him and Ricochet doing together, or him and Apollo Crews doing together? Nothing. So I was really happy to see this happen, because now we get to see a side of Cedric that we haven't gotten to see. And it also made Big Swole happy too, because, she's always rooting for her husband on social media. So that was cool to see. Then we had the Street Profits versus Andrade and Angel Garza again. And there were tensions, of course, between Angel, Andrade, and Zelina, because Angel had left them, behind last week to run away from Retribution, and he left them to get attacked, and he didn't have their back. So there really wasn't that much to the match, besides the whole infighting between Angel and Andrade, which is going to give them an inevitable beef, and I'm pretty sure a really good match out of the both of them at some point. And then Garza had walked out on them again, leaving Montez Ford to give a frog splash to Andrade for the victory. And hopefully this is the last time we'll see them fight, because watching them fight each other over and over again is just kind of annoying if you're not going to give Andrade and Angel a chance at the title. So there was that. So after the match, unexpectedly, you had Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro, who are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, arrive as a part of the Brand to Brand initiative, which I completely forgot that they had. And they were staring them down and basically challenging them to a match on Raw next week. So that's going to be in our face too. So they were basically, throwing shade at each other, throwing barbs at one another. And what's so funny is, I think the funniest part of this whole promo between the two champions is or at least the two sets of champions, is the fact that Montez told Cesaro that he probably needs to get an STD check because of the many partners that he's had as a tag team wrestler. And I thought that was a major burn, no pun intended, because it was just like, if you really think about it, Cesaro, he's such a good wrestler, and you would think that he would have had, more chances at singles gold, but he really hasn't. And a lot of the stuff that he's been doing has been mostly tag team stuff. So it was just funny to see Montez Ford bring that up in the way that he did. So it's going to be really good to see those two fight each other, even though this is kind of a match that you would sort of expect to see towards Survivor Series, but we're still too early for that, because it's just September and Survivor Series doesn't happen until November. So, whatever, but it's still going to be good regardless. Then we had Dominic Mysterio and Murphy sort of throwing barbs at each other. Charlie Caruso introduced the Mysterio family for an in-ring promo, and then Ray discussed how proud he is of his son Dominic, stating that
that he knows what to do in order to get the win against Murphy in their street fight that night. And then Murphy interrupted and basically blamed Seth, and basically like blamed his Seth Rollins betraying him on Dominic. He was just like, Dom has a bright future here in WWE, but the ultimate sacrifice will be to end it before it ever got started. And then he challenged him to the street fight, and then Dominic accepted it. And it's kind of interesting to see how Murphy isn't taking responsibility for his own failings. He's blaming it all on Dominic. It's like he's blaming Seth Rollins being angry at him all on Dominic, as opposed to really understanding the idea that not only it's a part of Murphy's shortcomings, but also Seth's shortcomings as a leader. Like, Seth should not have turned his back on Murphy the way he did, because Murphy's been there every step of the way ever since this whole disciple messiah thing had started. So it's kind of sucky that Seth would just turn his back on him like that. But they're playing that long game out, so that's going to be interesting once that actually happens. And then you had the VIP lounge, and Cedric was there. So Cedric basically talked about how he's officially joined the Hurt Business and how they gave him his good little gold and black t-shirt and everything. And Shelton Benjamin actually expressed his skepticism, and just wondering, what is Alexander's motivations in joining the Hurt Business. He was like, look, if you try to pull anything, I will beat you up. But, Alexander was like, no, like, I'm really in this, for the long haul, and because it's going to be beneficial to me and my professional growth. So as this promo is going on, the Viking Raiders interrupted it, followed by Cruz and Ricochet, and then they basically started a whole brawl or whatever, which led to an 8-man tag match between them. And it's not like you couldn't see this coming, but this match was pretty much as good as you could expect it all to be between all these tag teams. And the Hurt Business wound up winning because, they just have to win because they're being beefed up. So, it was still a good match. But then something questionable that happened was the fact that the finish was flubbed, because it's like, even though it was about Cedric Alexander, growing to be this roaring star on his own, the referee had messed up the count somehow. I think he had covered someone, and then the 3 count wasn't the 3 count. I think he was covering Ricochet. That's who it was. And it wasn't a 3 count. It was like a 2 count, and then he had jumped out, and it was supposed to be a 3 count. And either way, it just kind of destroyed the moment for Cedric almost, because it was just like, come on, guys, like, referees, what y'all doing? Like, it was bad. But outside of that, the point was the fact that the Hurt Business is now stronger because Cedric's in it. So, hey, whatever. Here's hoping that the referees can get their lives together, because they made another mistake, I think, in the show later on. But, refs, get your lives in order. Then we had Keith Lee versus Randy Orton, for the third time in a couple of weeks. And Keith Lee had dominated the match, kind of early. And there was this really cool spot where Randy Orton tried to hit Keith Lee with the RKO, but Keith Lee used his girth to block it. And that was one of the coolest moments I had ever seen in my life, because it's not often you really see somebody block the RKO, because the RKO out of nowhere is one of the most over finishers in all of wrestling, in wrestling and outside, and also in pop culture as well. So to see him sort of block it was just kind of like, yes, Keith Lee, do your thing. And then there was a point where there was a headlock after a Orton stomp, but then Keith Lee had fought out and then flattened him with a power slam. But then Keith had set up Orton for a spirit bomb, but then Orton escaped and then was able to deliver an RKO. But then, despite being banned, you had Drew McIntyre insinuate himself with a Claymore, which drew a disqualification. And he basically told Randy Orton, who was basically unconscious, saying, I want you to see me in your dreams. And then Pierce ordered McIntyre out of the arena as Orton nursed his jaw. So basically, in a sense, they're making Keith Lee still look strong, because even though Keith Lee lost this match via disqualification, he still didn't take a pin from Randy Orton, so he still never lost. And I saw a lot of people on social media get frustrated because they feel like, oh, they're ruining Keith Lee already. And guys, no, he's not. Like, they're not ruining Keith Lee already, because he hasn't been pinned by an OG like Randy Orton just yet. And then he has a non-title match against Drew McIntyre this week. So it's not all, all hope is lost for NXT hopefuls. Like, it never truly is. Sometimes it has been, but in this case, you can tell they're actually trying with Keith Lee. So don't just give up hope. Don't give up hope on Keith just yet. It's okay. Breathe in and out. So after that, you had Raw Underground and a lot of different stuff going on at this point. Kevin Owens and Aleister Black fought only a little while on Raw Underground before the commercial break. And then, after the break came back, they resumed their fight. But then Aleister Black tried for an arm bar, but then Owens broke by slamming his opponent into the wall. And it was really cool to see that happen. Now, I expect them to have like a match, but to see them in Raw Underground was still kind of cool too. So it was whatever. And then there was a brawl between other Underground competitors. And it was just, you really didn't see that much of Raw Underground after that point until Dabba-Kato decided to attack both of them and lay them out, which kind of just left that, feud up in the air at this point, because I'm pretty sure they're going to fight in a match pretty soon. But then also in the midst of that, you had a 2-on-1 handicap match between Shayna Baszler and the Riot Squad, and then Nia Jax and the Riot Squad. And as this match kept going on, it was a pretty by the numbers match between these girls. Retribution wound up interrupting the match, and a logo had came up, but then it's just like, and then they basically cut a promo with their voices distorted, and they were threatening everybody and threatening the WWE universe and the system and all of the above. And we are still nowhere close to figuring out who they are. There are a lot of predictions online, but no one really truly knows exactly who they are. And I'm ready to know who these people are and why they're doing this and why they're causing so much havoc. So, I mean, hey, whatever. And then we had the street fight between Dominic and Mysterio. Between Dominic and Murphy. I'm getting all my M's mixed up. And Dominic didn't come to this match alone. He had Ray, his sister Aaliyah, and his mom Angie out there with him, and they were all armed with kendo sticks. And Murphy attacked from the opening bell, and he was catching Dominic with a big knee before throwing him over the announce table. And Dominic kept fighting back and showing his fearlessness. And it was like, then there was a point where he had jumped off the Raw stage screens and onto Murphy heading into the break. And then Murphy tried to seize control during the match, and then he teased shoving Dominic's eye into the steel steps again, because apparently that's just the worst thing that could ever happen now when you're facing Murphy or Seth Rollins. But then he decided to hang him up on the barricade and injuring his ribs instead. But then he brutalized him with a chair after that point. But then Dominic fought out of an abdominal stretch and then sent Murphy out of the ring. But then in this really amazing spot, as Murphy was looking under the ring for more weapons, Aaliyah and Angie, freed Dominic from the ropes that he had him tied in, which was reminiscent of that Raw spot during Dominic's first match where they had wrapped him up and beat him with the kendo sticks. They freed him. And then as he freed him, Dominic delivered an amazing sunset flip bomb through a table, and it was one of the coolest spots ever because it looked like it really hurt Murphy bad. I was just like, yes, like that was just a really cool move for someone who is just starting out. And then it earned him a 2 count before he was able to team with his dad to unload on Murphy with like kendo sticks. And then as they were beating Murphy up with these kendo sticks, Rey Mysterio yelled out, "Payback is a bitch, isn't it?" And And it was really cool. So after that point, Ray invited Angie and Aaliyah into the ring, and they all basically beat up on Murphy over and over again and kept beating him up over and over again until the show went off. And this was really cool to see this family get all this revenge on Buddy Murphy after all of the torment that him and Seth Rollins had put on their family. Now, you would hope that this would be the end of the story, but next week they announced that Dominic and I believe Seth are going to fight in a cage match on Friday. Not Friday, but Monday. So, yeah. So, this isn't going to end just regular. So, I think this is probably because of the fact that Ray is injured and he can't fight himself. So, they're just putting Dominic in these matches. So, here's hoping that after this match that this feud will be over, because it's becoming a little bit long in the tooth. So that's pretty much everything that happened on Raw. And so now we're going to recap NXT, which took place on Tuesday. Okay, so now we're going to weekly recap NXT, which took place on Super Tuesday again. I believe next week they might be going back to Wednesday. So, yeah, this was just still a little bit of an adjustment, but, we'll manage. So, we're going to start with the women like we always do. So, Shotzi Blackheart and Io Shirai met up in the ring together, and they were actually torturing Robert Stone because Shotzi had found Robert Stone snooping around her tank, and he was giving off the impression that he wanted to steal it. But then as, she was chasing him around, Aaliyah made the save by attacking Blackheart, but then she accidentally ruined Io Shirai's photo shoot. So she bumped into her, not knowing that she was on the other side of the curtain. But then Blackheart and Shirai attacked Aaliyah and Robert Stone in the ring. And then as they, ran them away, Shotzi basically, grabbed the title for Io Shirai and feigned like she was going to give it to her. But then she basically, held on to it for a long period of time as Io kind of looked disgusted with her, like, how dare you, grab my title like that and disrespect me. So now they're teasing the idea that Shotzi might be the next in line to go after Io Shirai for the NXT Women's title. And this will be really good because, it just will, because there's nothing that the NXT Women's division can do that will be any type of wrong at this point. So that would be really cool. Also with the women, you had Tegan Knox going to Candice LeRae and Johnny Gargano's house, and they were going to rekindle their friendship and all of the above. And Johnny Gargano brought her to the dinner table, and he was sitting there with the both of them as if he was sort of watching over them, and it made Tegan feel a little bit uncomfortable. So Johnny Gargano kind of took the hint and left, and Candice asked Tegan to consider taking the Gargano approach and forgetting about the fans, and just being her own woman. And then it seemed as if the rest of the conversation after that point was, on the up and up until Candice LeRae talked about who would be next in line, or who would be the next NXT Women's Champion out of the both of them, insinuating that it was going to be Candice and not Tegan. And this is where they got upset at each other. And then they broke out a fight, and I believe Candice was the first to throw some food or some water or something. And then Tegan dumped some spaghetti on Johnny Gargano's head, and then LeRae accidentally smashed the TV, and then they left. And it was just, and then they basically just, left that to consider that Candice and Tegan are no longer friends and that this relationship isn't going to work out. And so that's pretty much what happened with that. And also with the women, you had the main event, which was Mercedes Martinez versus Rhea Ripley in the steel cage match. And they kept calling this the Battle of the Badasses. And it was really amazing to see these girls, sort of fight each other. And just destroy one another because they're both amazing powerhouses who have lots of good technical support. And then you also have the X factor of Robert Stone being there. So Rhea Ripley came out swinging really early, and then in this whole encounter, it was like she was really malicious in her earlier destruction of Mercedes, but Mercedes was fighting back, and then she fought back with a fisherman suplex because she's the queen of suplexes. Like, throughout this entire match, she just gave impressive suplex after impressive suplex. She even did a suplex off of the top rope, and Rhea Ripley sold it so well with how she landed on her shoulders. It was so amazing. And then she kept fighting back and with a steel chair to brutalize Rhea, but then Rhea pulled out the prism trap, almost getting a tap out, but then it was like Robert Stone tried to distract Ripley by setting up Martinez to be able to hit Rhea with a kendo stick shot, but then Martinez caught her with a top rope neck breaker and then Ripley just refused to be stopped, and then she just kept going, and then she hit a riptide from the second rope and then gave her the win. Now, I wasn't mad with how this ended because the match was just so cool. And honestly, I do believe Rhea Ripley is sort of on the come up now from her having lost, a couple of high profile matches for the NXT women's title and stuff. So she's just trying to beef herself back up. And Mercedes Martinez really lost nothing in losing a match like this because she lost against someone who she's evenly matched with in terms of power and technical ability. So I'm not necessarily mad with how that ended, but I am interested to see what Mercedes is going to do next. And that's really all that happened with the women. So NXT started with the NXT Championship match between Adam Cole and Finn Balor. And a lot of us were under the impression that this would be the main event, but they decided to make the women the main event, and I'm never mad about that. But I was surprised to see Adam Cole and Finn Balor start the show. So it was interesting to see. They started out slow, and they were filling out each other's, basic wrestling offense. But then the action, of course, ramped up the more they felt comfortable with each other. And this match was a stunner. It was an absolute amazing stunner between them two. Like, they just kept hitting each other with the best that they had, and it was going to be a back and forth match between them both. It was almost like you could almost feel that maybe Adam Cole would win, or you could almost feel that Finn was going to win. It was just a lot of back and forth. But where it ended was the fact that the Undisputed Era leader, just fought back with a super kick and into the last shot for a near fall. But then the Prince pulled out a top rope 1916 for the win. And I think during this point, there was a point where Finn was injured in his knee and he almost didn't win because of that. But he wound up injuring his knee during a high point in the match. But he was able to pull out that 1916 for the win, and now he is the NXT champion for the second time in his career. And I was really happy with this simply because of the fact that Finn, since he had been back in NXT, hadn't really done as much. He had a couple wins underneath his belt, but as far as anything of note, in terms of going for the NXT North American title or anything else like that, it was like he just kept losing. And I was just like, bro, what is his point in being here if he's gonna keep losing? But he wound up winning the big one and wound up becoming champion again for the first time in a long time, even in terms of main roster appeal. He hadn't been champion for a long time, so it was good to see that. And then they showed clips backstage of him and Adam Cole doing the too sweet at each other as former Bullet Club members in the Independents. So that was really cool to see. So after that, you had a match between Velveteen Dream and Ashante Adonis. And I tried to joke about this on Twitter and say that there was a lot of chocolate in the ring between the both of them, and it was, good. But everyone who was live tweeting was just talking about how, they just want Velveteen Dream off of television. So this is kind of hard. So I'm just going to talk about the match. So Ashante Adonis almost rolled up Velveteen Dream for a 3 count, and he actually put up a good fight up, against him, for him to be relatively, new. He was pretty impressive in his, I don't want to say his debut because I feel like I've seen him before, but it's just been a while. But Ashante Adonis really did hold his own for a little while until Velveteen Dream recovered and hit him with a Dream Valley driver for the win. But so after this match, Kushida returned with a whole bunch of anger and came back with an aggressive edge, and started beating up on Velveteen Dream for revenge from having attacked him and lost out on another title opportunity. And he trapped Velveteen Dream in the ropes and locked him in a cross arm breaker until the officials broke it up. So now we've got this feud between Velveteen Dream and Kushida, who has, more of an edge now. And so this Velveteen Dream, he has more of an edge now. So we have these two we have one as an anti-hero, and then we have one who's a heel, because Velveteen Dream's a heel now. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. And then we have Breezango and Imperium talking about their tag team title rematches between them. And they talked about how much they don't have a common aesthetic and how much they don't like each other. So they're going to fight each other again. So that's going to be cool. And I'm just really proud of Breezango. But anyway, then we had another match between Bronson Reed and Austin Theory. And even though it was good to see Austin Theory, in the ring again, because he just kind of disappeared for a while, I don't know why, but a lot of people on Twitter have been insinuating it was because of some unsavory reasons. So I guess the more information I get on that, I guess the more I'll probably either discuss it or probably not discuss it, depending on how bad it is. But they fought each other, and basically Bronson Reed held his own, throughout the entire match, and he used one opening to get going, hitting a series of strikes and splashes. And even though it seemed like Theory just bit off more than he could chew with him, and so Bronson Reed won the match. So there's really not that much to discuss there. At least Bronson Reed has more of a momentum going with his new gimmick as the Colossal and not the Thick Boy. I enjoyed the Thick Boy gimmick because, how many men in WWE actually, embraces the fact that they thick? Not really. Not that many. So, that's gone. So, yeah. So, anyway, I guess it's because I'm just thick that I just, embrace that. But anyway, so now we have another match between Roderick Strong and Killian Dane. And it's kind of strange, the conundrum that Killian Dane finds himself in. It just seems like he's just become the new big guy that people just fight, when they need somebody to fight in NXT. And it's kind of weird to see that happen because he was once Insanity, but then that got broken up. And then he went back to NXT, to sort of get better. And now he's just the big guy that people just choose to fight randomly at times. And it's just kind of sad. But Killian, fought and came out swinging against Roderick Strong. He kept battering him with a powerful offense. But then the technical offense just of Roderick just wasn't meant to go up against him with all this big size. But he tried to put up a good fight. But then Bobby Fish, who was out there, with his Undisputed Era brethren, pulled Roderick Strong to safety after finishing a running splash, which set Killian Dane off, who went after Bobby Fish. And the distraction allowed Roderick Strong to win with a jumping high knee. So they were all stumping all over, Killian Dane after the win happened. But then Drake Maverick tried to save Killian Dane but got beat down for his effort for it. And then Killian Dane grabbed a steel pipe and sent Strong and Fish running. But then he also proceeded to beat up Drake Maverick afterward too. And it was kind of weird to see Drake Maverick, at least he was being a good guy and coming to his safety. But at the same time, to see Killian Dane sort of beat him up afterward was just kind of like, well, dang, he was trying to help you, dude. But whatever. And that's really all that happened on NXT. It was a pretty good show. So here's hoping, they find their groove, back again on Wednesday. And something else that kind of caught me off guard about the whole Wednesday night and Tuesday night thing was how people were talking about how AEW was still over NXT in ratings. But something that weirded me out was just the fact that how y'all gonna have them compete against each other when they weren't even on the same night that week? It's really strange how people will just find any reason to make it seem like AEW is just ahead of NXT. no matter what, and it's just like they're just willing to do it no matter what. Oh, they were ahead of them in ratings. I thought the key to having NXT and AEW compete against each other was the fact they were going to compete on the same night. I thought that was the point. It's supposed to be a supposedly Wednesday night war, even though NXT isn't actively participating in that war because AEW is the main one who's always throwing shots at them. It's always, supposed to be on the same night. So I don't think the whole ratings war would supposedly count. I don't think it would count in terms of this week, considering NXT was on Tuesday and AEW was on Wednesday. So sometimes I just feel like we do too much as wrestling fans. We really do too much. And also in the media, we have a tendency to do too much too. So yeah, that's all that happened on NXT. I had to go on that little rant a little bit, but that's all that happened on NXT. And now we're going to recap SmackDown. Okay, so we're going to do our last weekly recap of SmackDown, which took place last night from the Thunderdome. And the show started with a tribute to the lives lost in the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. I want to send my love and condolences and peace out to any person that's lost someone or something on that day 19 years ago. You are always in my heart and always in my prayers, and I will always send good vibes to you, definitely, because that day really did rock us and change us in a way that I don't think we've been able to fully recover from, but we've been able to recover from with time at the same time. So to anyone who was ever affected by that, I just hope and pray that you've gotten the level of healing that you would need from that terrible day. So to go into the rest of the show and what happened with the women, Bayley, the SmackDown Women's Champion, was able to address why she attacked Sasha Banks last week. They replayed her attacking Sasha as she sat in a chair in the middle of the ring, and they replayed the attack and how bad it was and everything, and showed her smiling or whatnot, and it was just kind of crazy. So after they replayed the attack, Bayley talked about how she knew that even though they were teaming together, she knew that Sasha was going to get ready to do the same thing to her. She said that she never cared about Sasha and just used her to get what she wanted, the same way Sasha used her to get what she wanted. She said she claimed that Sasha was useless after they lost the tag titles before taking her chair and leaving her in the ring. She basically said Sasha, she was useless after we lost the titles, and then after. But what I found really funny was the fact that she was talking about how useless Sasha was, with them being in the tag title picture. But when you look back at most of those matches, you saw that Sasha was the one who was doing the most work in terms of keeping those tag titles for as long as they did. And she was also doing the most work in helping Bayley keeping her SmackDown Women's title as well, and being the good friend that she wanted to be to her. But when it came to Sasha and her Raw Women's title, it's like Bayley wasn't doing half as much work to help her keep it, because those last few matches where Sasha was screaming, "Bayley, help me, Bayley, help me," Bayley was not helping her. She really wasn't. And it was just kind of sad to see, Sasha putting in, it was like a one-sided relationship, how there's always one person putting so much into the relationship, but then there's always that other person who doesn't care as much, but they just keep them around just because they know it'll be good for them. It's just like, that's kind of how their relationship was. So I just cannot wait to see Sasha Banks rise from the ashes and destroy her, so I can finally get what I want. So after she cut this really scathing promo talking about how useless Sasha was and how she was using me, so I just decided to destroy her and all of the above, they started the entrances for the Fatal 4-Way match for the number one contendership to Bayley's SmackDown Women's title. And Nikki Cross was the first to come out there as Bayley was leaving with her chair and her title. So when Nikki Cross was walking towards the ring, Bayley smacked her in the back with the chair, which is something I kind of saw coming. So she attacked her, and then, they went to a commercial break. And then after the break, we came back and saw Alexa Bliss trying to comfort Nikki Cross, and then you had Lacey Evans do her entrance, and you had Tamina in the ring as well. So the thing that disappointed me the most about this Fatal 4-Way match is not even the fact that the performances weren't exactly as good as they could have been, but was just the fact that Naomi wasn't in it. And I saw on social media as I was live tweeting that there were a lot of people who were disappointed with the fact that Naomi wasn't in it. Simply because the last time we saw her on SmackDown television, she was the one who beat Bayley in the Beat the Clock challenge, while she was a part of the Golden Role Models with Sasha. Sasha beat Naomi, but Naomi beat Bayley. So you would have thought that out of something like that maybe Naomi would go on to have another opportunity and be in this Fatal 4-Way match. But she wasn't. It's like you saw the usual suspects. You saw Tamina, you saw Alexa, you saw Nikki, which makes sense for Alexa and Nikki to be in it because they've been, prominent on television lately, with the whole Bray Wyatt situation and with Alexa going crazy and stuff. But Lacey Evans, who hasn't really been on television since she last lost to Naomi here again, that just made no sense to me. And it also makes me beg to ask WWE this question is, outside of Sasha Banks, why aren't they like promoting their black female wrestlers better outside of Sasha Banks? It's almost like if you're not Sasha Banks, it's almost like they don't care about you. It's almost like there's no Bianca like that much anymore, because we hadn't really seen her since her last, tag team foray with the Riot Squad. There's no Naomi. It's just like, come on, guys. Like, if you are claiming, they're doing all this diversity stuff with the, Hurt Business and also with the Mysterio family and stuff like that, then why can't you do the same for your black women who aren't Sasha Banks? And I understand you do have other women of color like Asuka, and Mickie James, because Mickie James is part Native American. And then you also have Asuka, who is Asian, and that's good for the most part. And then you have Tamina, who was in the Fatal 4-Way, who's Samoan. But at the same point and rate, as talented as Naomi is, and as much as we did that outcry for hashtag Naomi deserves better, they're not showing us that they actually care about what we said. And I'm not a whiner or a complainer in most cases, but in this case, last night was definitely a fluke in the sense that they didn't have Naomi in that match. Like, I don't know I would take it a whole lot better if Naomi was busy doing something else or something like that, which is something that my dad did say, well, maybe she's doing something else. But at the same point in rate, a part of me does feel some type of way about the fact that they're not beefing up their black female superstars who aren't Sasha Banks. And I love Sasha Banks. Like, I am a full-on stan of Sasha Banks. Like, she is the GOAT to me, but she is not the only black female that y'all need to be pushing. She's not the only talented black female that y'all need to be pushing WWE, and they need to do better. And they also need to do better with the fact that Alexa Bliss was out there wearing those locks. Even though I understand that Bray Wyatt had always had those locks or whatever, it's just the fact that I just don't like it when, other people wear locks like that. It's just kind of not cute. But either way, the Fatal 4-Way match happened and Nikki Cross wound up winning. So now she's the number one contender to Bayley's SmackDown Women's title. And they're going to fight each other at Clash of Champions. So here we go. But I will also say that Alexa Bliss hitting Nikki Cross with Sister Abigail and giving her a kiss on the forehead afterward and running off, to disappear into God knows where, which was another thing that made me mad about the match, was the fact that they were still billing it as a supposed Fatal 4-Way, but yet that spot that Alexa Bliss left blank wasn't filled, so it was just a triple threat. So I'm just kind of like, that was a spot that y'all could have used to give to Naomi if anybody was going to come out and do a Fatal 4-Way and keep that consistent, but they didn't. So anyway, that's pretty much what happened with the women. So, and also they showed more of who the mystery girl is with the fur coat and the red bottoms. And a lot of people think it's going to be either Maurice, which I mean, I highly doubt to a certain degree, or it's going to be Carmella with the rebrand. So I would definitely think it's going to be Carmella because she hasn't been on TV for a while and I miss her. So come on, Carmella, come on. So I think that's going to be cool. So that's all that happened with the women. And then and then we also got news today that Mandy Rose got traded to Raw. And that got revealed by The Miz on Talking Smack this morning. So that was interesting. So I guess, farewell to Mandy Rose and her SmackDown run. So that's all that happened with the women. So with the men, the show started with Paul Heyman coming out on his birthday, no less, to promote his client, Roman Reigns, the Universal Champion, before he asked Jey Uso to come out to the ring. And Jey came out there looking fired up and happy or whatever, and he was talking about how Jey Uso came out there and talked about how Paul Heyman had a long history with his family and how much love he has for him. And he thanked Paul for setting up his opportunity in the Fatal 4-Way. But then Paul Heyman said it was actually Roman's idea to have Jey Uso replace Big E. So Reigns basically said that him and his whole family is proud of him because he earned this opportunity to main event a pay-per-view. And he shifted gears and proceeded to say that he will whoop Jey the same way he used to do when they were kids because it's not his time to win the Universal title. And you could feel the tension in the air, but it wasn't as thick as it would be later on in the night. Because Baron Corbin came out there to interrupt and complained about Reigns using nepotism to give his cousin a title shot and called it an abuse of power. And then Sheamus came out there to agree with him. So Jey Uso got fired up and said, and suggested a tag match between him and Roman Reigns and Corbin and Sheamus. So Jey basically fought the both of them after that challenge, and Reigns just stood there and watched him fight, which basically added more to their tension. And I thought that was interesting because I'm saying here bro, that's your family and you just gonna let him fight by himself. But Roman Reigns is on his new teeth who this behavior, so that was it was really interesting. And then you had Jeff Hardy Gang versus AJ Styles for the Intercontinental title. But before Greg Hamilton could announce the competitors in the match, Sami Zayn came out there and ranted about how he's the real Intercontinental champion and called Jeff Hardy a sham champion. And then Adam Pearce, the dude who's in charge, but at the same time kind of isn't in charge because he's not over exaggerating his power, came out to remove Sami Zayn from the situation. And then while he was distracted, AJ Styles attacked him from behind. And then as soon as the bell rang, Jeff Hardy hit the twist of fate and he climbed up the top rope for a swanton bomb, but he missed it because AJ had moved out of the way. And then there was a point where after the break you saw AJ and Jeff Hardy crash into a barricade when Jeff jumped Edge Styles from the ring steps. But then of course you had a bunch of counters from AJ Styles, but then he kept focusing on Jeff Hardy's left leg that got injured and like a couple weeks ago. And then Sami Zayn came out of nowhere and attacked Styles, and as he tried to hit the phenomenal forearm, which basically made a disqualification in the process. And he took out Jeff Hardy with a haluva kick before saying there was only one true champion. And while Jeff Hardy was trying to make his way up the rope, as still your champion, he collapsed on his way up to the ramp and said it was due to dehydration. But then Hardy was in the trainer's room when Zayn came back to taunt him, but then Hardy tackled him, and then they went to a break as they brawled. So basically what we're doing is we're playing who's the actual champion. But in all honesty, Jeff Hardy is the actual champion because of the fact that Sami Zayn got stripped of his title due to him not being there once the pandemic era started. After he won, his match, after he won the title and stuff, you just didn't see him anymore. And so they stripped him of the title. So the title was left vacant. So with the title being left vacant, that meant nobody was champion. So ever since all the debacle happened with Daniel Bryan and everybody else winning the IC title, and now Jeff Hardy has it, Jeff Hardy's the actual champion. AJ just wants the title back, and now you got Sami Zayn trying to insinuate himself as the actual champion when in actuality he's not. So yeah, it's a lot going on. Then we had Lucha House Party versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. But before Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura fought in their match, they were in the Champions Lounge. But then they got an impromptu visit from the Street Profits. And I was really happy because anytime you get a double dose of the Street Profits in 1 week, it's just extra joy. So they came, dressed up in their suits or whatnot, just basically antagonizing Cesaro and Nakamura. And Nakamura was like, y'all don't belong here and all this other stuff. And Cesaro was like, no, we have a match and we need to focus. And so they went out, and fought. And something else that I've noticed is the fact that Kalisto is calling himself basically the leader of the Lucha House Party, much to the chagrin of Grand Metalik and Lince Dorado. Like, they really don't like the fact that he's calling himself a leader. But it's like ever since Kalisto has returned, he came back, beefed up, he's been working out and everything. He came out with this new white outfit that he had never worn before. So he's kind of feeling himself a little bit, but you can see the tension rising in that group as well. But even with that, they were still able, to get the win over the tag champs. So maybe down the line, they'll have a tag team title opportunity again. Which left Cesaro and Nakamura reeling, and they were angry at the fact that they were distracted by the Street Profits inviting a whole bunch of other people into the Champions Lounge to have like a big old party. Which seems like a pretty Street Profits thing to do. They're the cool guys, so they're gonna invite everybody to a party, to a place that's not even theirs. But it was just pretty funny. So after that, you had Otis versus John Morrison, and Otis is coming out, with his, briefcase and everything, because he is still Mr. Money in the Bank, no matter how many people claim they trying to forget. And he just keeps fighting John Morrison and The Miz or whatever. And John Morrison and The Miz keep antagonizing him over and over again because they feel like he's not deserving of the Money in the Bank contract. And they keep trying to steal it from him because they feel like they should be Mr. Money in the Bank. But it's so weird though, because you don't win Money in the Bank by just stealing it. It's not like the 24/7 title where whoever takes it or whoever wins it in a match, has possession of it. Like, whoever won it in that ladder match is supposed to be Mr. Money in the Bank. But I don't know why they're doing this to him. But Otis keeps outsmarting him because he not only keeps winning those matches that he's in, he keeps trading off the cases that the contract is even in and leaving them, with all of his left behind lunch stuff. So that was pretty interesting. But I just don't know exactly what point that's supposed to prove if they keep trying to steal the contract from him. Like, that doesn't make you Mr. Money in the Bank. But then somehow or another, The Miz is trying to call in some type of favor to try to find a loophole in a contract somehow, because apparently there's always a loophole in a contract. So I guess we'll just have to see how this goes. But I'm not necessarily, I'm just not too sold on why they're doing all this. But the night almost basically ended with the Firefly Funhouse, with Bray Wyatt talking about how he tried to reveal a new friend, and everybody thought it was going to be Alexa Bliss, right? But it wasn't. It was actually supposed to be a parrot named Pasquale, but it seemed like Pasquale the parrot died in the box because Bray forgot to poke holes in the box. So there's no Pasquale. But then the Vince McMahon puppet came in and basically told Bray Wyatt that he was going to get a new special advisor to the Firefly Funhouse, who was going to be Wobbly Walrus. So Wobbly Walrus was made to look like Paul Heyman. There's just no other... There's nothing else to truly say about that. They were throwing shade at the fact that Roman Reigns is Universal Champion now and his advisor is Paul Heyman. So now I guess Bray Wyatt is going to have a special person now to sort of help the Firefly Funhouse get back on its supposedly good graces. So I don't know what the point of that was, but hey, whatever. There's no word yet on if Alexa Bliss is going to visit the Firefly Funhouse at some point, but she keeps acting all kinds of cuckoo. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So the main event was a tag team match with Sheamus and Baron Corbin taking on Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. So Uso was attacked during his entrance, and what was so strange about this entire thing was just how Roman Reigns didn't even come out, until the end of the match, to save him and be by his side. And the bell had rang and the match had begun, and Uso basically fought in a handicap match this entire time. And he didn't show, and then Roman Reigns didn't even show up until Sheamus was about to hit a bro kick on Jey Uso. And then Reigns' entrance music, distracted Sheamus and Corbin enough for Jey Uso to get a victory on him. And so he was able to sort of pin him by himself. But it was still so funny because Roman Reigns tagged himself in so he could get the pin with a spear. Like, he tagged himself into the match and told Jey Uso, motion for him to get out of the ring so he could spear Sheamus and get the pin for himself. And then as they were celebrating the win, and Jey Uso lifted his arm, that had the Universal title in it, Roman was looking at him like he was just an absolute bug, on a windshield. And it was so bad. It was just so nasty looking. When I saw that image, I was just like, ooh, a picture is just worth 1,000 words, because it was almost like he was just looking at him like, you're not worthy to be holding up my arm with this title next to it. It was so gross. Whoa. The tension is just really, really hot with them, and I'm really ready to see them fight and to see how they're going to continue this story going into Clash of Champions. So outside of that, to basically correct myself, Roman Reigns basically speared Sheamus for the win, and Jey Uso didn't get the pin on Sheamus. I apologize for that, y'all, but it was just, the tension between Jey and Roman is going to be really good. Now, a lot of people online were saying they feel like Jey and Roman could have some type of faction out of it, if they still wind up being friends after this match. So maybe if, Jimmy Uso comes back and they start a whole Samoan dynasty thing, because something that I do notice is the fact that Paul Heyman keeps calling Roman Reigns the tribal chief. And it sounds like, there's some type of insinuation that maybe there could be a Samoan dynasty thing that could happen with that, but who's to say, so I think it's still intriguing to see. It's one of the best parts of SmackDown at this point. So this was a good night on SmackDown. It was a little bit on the struggle bus, and there was a couple things that happened that I didn't necessarily like, but it was still, a pretty good show. So that's the end of our weekly recap, and now we're going to go to the conclusion. All right, so thank you so much for listening to this special 25th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I also want to send a special shout out and thank you to Promise Braxton, who came and just brought some beautiful positive messaging, to my show, and actually shared a lot about her wrestling journey. And I wish her nothing but continued success at Reality of Wrestling. So if you want to check out, anything that she's got going on, you can always follow her on all of her social media handles. And you can also, watch Reality of Wrestling out of Texas, which was founded by Booker T. Always check that out. And if you also just want to continue to support my show, you can follow me on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. And you can follow my Facebook page, which is Hardy Wrestling with Stephanie Hardy, or just Hardy Wrestling Podcast as well. I'm just really grateful for this journey, and I'm just really glad to have reached 25 episodes at this point. I'm glad that I've created this safe space for people to go, and learn about wrestling if they've never watched it before. And even if they continue to watch it, or if they're diehard fans, they can listen to me and actually get some type of, joy from it. So I'm just really grateful for those who do listen to me, and for all the friends that I've made in the podcasting community and stuff. And I'm just really happy that this is, just taking place in my life. And I hope to continue to create great content for you guys as I continue to grow as a podcaster and content creator. So like I said, just follow me everywhere. If you have any wrestling questions, feel free to inbox me some. If there's something that you want me to watch wrestling wise that you want me to give my opinion about, I can do that as well. Or if you have any suggestions for people who you want me to interview, you can do that, as well as you can just tell me who you want me to interview too. So with that in mind, I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend, and I hope you continue to have a great week and continue to stay safe out there, and to just always be your best self, and always, show up in the world courageously and be the light, because there's so much darkness going on. Just remember to be the light. So thank you again for listening to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And until next time, bye y'all.